Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back again. Today I want to talk to you about What Moves the Dead and how it is different from the original Fall of the House of Usher. Alright, so I am out here in my yard. As you can see, leaves everywhere, and I was like, I want to wear this flannel for some nice fall vibes, but it is like 83 degrees outside, and I'm still hoping that it'll get cooler. It sounds like it's supposed to get cooler soon, but not yet. So for now, here it is, tank top in the leaves. But so anyway, so I had told you before that I was reading What Moves the Dead by Kingfisher, and I actually didn't realize when I picked this up that this is a reimagining of Edgar Allan Poe's Fall of the House of Usher. I didn't realize it at first, but it becomes very obvious very quickly if you've read Fall of the House of Usher before. It literally uses like the phrase like the House of Usher, and I was just like, wait a minute. And then I looked on the back and it says it like all over it about it being inspired by Edgar Allan Poe. So I don't know how I didn't realize that when I bought it, but I didn't. I just saw it on like spooky fall read recommendations. And so I picked it up and I liked it quite a bit. It is 80 degrees outside, so of course iced coffee, but I'm also an iced coffee person until like January, and then once it's been cold for a while, then I switch. I feel like that's sort of weird, but anyway. So the first part of this is going to be spoiler-free review, and then the second half will be me like really analyzing, going into all of my thoughts about everything that happens. So if you are looking for spoiler-free, at a certain point I'll be like, spoilers ahead, and then, you know, obviously go read this before you watch that part. But so I did actually really enjoy this. I love the idea of like something weird horror-wise going on, and it being involved with like nature and mushrooms, and it's very dark, very creepy, definitely a very good autumn vibe. I thought the character development was pretty good. It is a very short book, and so a lot of times with books this short, you don't get a lot of character development necessarily. It's sort of like, here's the story, and the main character is just a lens to see it through. But this book goes in like much deeper than that. It gives you a very good background of your main character, who is like a unique character in their own right. And then also like this backstory for where they're from. It seems like it's almost like an alternate timeline of real life, if that makes sense. And so it's creative in that way as well, which I didn't expect from like a short book like this. And then the premise does a very good job of like building suspense. So I did really enjoy it. Yeah, let me look at my notes. So I think if you are looking for like a spooky, atmospheric read, this is a very good example of that. It is very similar to like classic gothic horrors. I'm sure you've read like a lot of short stories that have premises like this, or, you know, there's like an illness and it's dark and creepy. But this is like a modern take on it. So it is kind of nice in that sense, where it's like you get that modern vibe without, or the classic horror vibe, without getting sort of bogged down. Like some of those older ones, I feel like have, it's sort of like the prose is very like poetic, or it's too lengthy in spots where you want it to not, like in descriptions of things. And I find a lot of times with like Gothic novels, like classic Gothic novels, there are times where it really drags as it's like slowly building tension, which I think can be a really good thing. Not necessarily everyone can write that, but that can be a good way of like exploring a topic. But for this, you get that Gothic feeling without having to go through those sort of parts that drag. It does build tension very well, but it doesn't make you like wait too long for something to happen. So yeah, so like if you are looking for something to read this fall, or you know, you just like Gothic horror, I would definitely recommend it. I would say it's probably a 3.5 out of 5, closer to a 4 maybe. I did have like a couple of things I want to talk about with it that sort of took it down a little bit, but it is very hard to get a 5-star from me. Obviously, there are a few authors, Robin Hobb being one of them. I'm just going to mention her every time I possibly can. That typically would be a 5 out of 5. Even Robin Hobb in some novels isn't necessarily a 5 out of 5, but is probably close to like a 4.5. Obviously, like, art is subjective and art is never perfect. So there are things that obviously I really like and align with what I'm looking for, where I'm like, this is really, really, really good. So, you know, I love it. But that being said, like, it's never like necessarily perfect. Like, that almost sounds like rude, but it's true. And so I would say that a 3.5 is a very high rating from me. This is not by any means like one of my all-time favorite books. I probably won't read it again. I'm not going to be like gushing over like, oh my god, this is so good. But it was entertaining. I did enjoy it, and it's a very short read. So if you're looking for something that is going to be entertaining and like a quick read, then like, yeah, 100% read this. But it's certainly not like life-changing in any way, or something that really stuck in my brain for a long time. I definitely enjoyed it, but I definitely recommend it. I think you should read it, but I don't think it's going to be like life-changing or like really, it's not like super emotionally deep in any way, or, you know, whatever. So like, yeah, like it's worth a read for sure. I just wouldn't expect like too much from it necessarily. Like, don't go into it thinking that it's going to be life-changing. But you will enjoy it for sure. I'm sure you will. If this is the type of theme that you like, I think you will enjoy it. That being said, there are things that I want to talk about. It does differ quite a bit from the original, even while still being close to it. Like, the storyline definitely is very close to the original, but I think it changes some things, improves some things, and I wanted to sort of compare and contrast them a little bit. So from here on out, I'm going to talk about the whole book, spoilers ahead, but I'm going to talk about What Moves the Dead versus Edgar Allan Poe's Fall of the House of Usher, and yeah, we'll talk about all of the similarities and differences, and I'm excited to get into it. So let's talk about it now. Okay, so in the original Edgar Allan Poe, Fall of the House of Usher, it is a very short story. I think it's 12 pages, and probably more like 10 because there are like big breaks in the page at certain points. But it's very succinct. It's very straight to the point. And so in that sense, there's not a lot of room for world building or character building. It's just sort of like, here's an idea. And the main character is like I was saying before, just sort of like eyes to see the situation through. You don't really know anything about him. Them, I guess. I think you do know it's a man, but it doesn't really stand out as like being an individual character. It's just sort of like almost like the narrator, just this is what's going on. Like I showed up there. So the premise of Fall of the House of Usher is the main character gets a letter from his friend saying that he's very ill and he wants him to come see him because he's likely dying. And so his friend, who he hasn't seen for a while, I want to say it's years, goes to their mansion in the woods, and it is very secluded, and it's in this sort of, he describes it as being like quiet and still and dark, and the house itself looks like it has many eyes and is like creeping him out. And he goes there, and his friend is very like frail and describes his hair as like being so light and thin that it like floats on the air, which I think is such a great description. Like I feel like if I was like writing that character, like I wouldn't think to write it that way, but it gives him like a ghostly like appearance, which I think works really well. He's really frail, and the main character is like, yeah, it's very obvious that like he's going to die. And it doesn't tell you what the letter says at all. I don't really know what the like what the purpose of him, other than like saying goodbye, like being like, I'm so sorry that you're dying, like see you one last time sort of thing. Like I don't know what the purpose of his visit is supposed to be. I sort of like it doesn't necessarily matter, but I did wonder about it because he's there for a while, like a couple of weeks or something like that. And I think he's like literally just there waiting for his friend to die. But while he's there, he sees his sister. Wait, hold on. Let me get their names. Okay, so the main character is there to see his friend Roderick, who is the one that's very ill. And then while he is there, he's like talking to him, and he sees his sister Madeline like walk through the room. She sort of like, also again in a very ghostly manner, sort of like floats by in the background and goes through a door and disappears. And she is also ill and has been having like sleeping fits where she falls asleep and like can't be woken. But you don't really see anything from Madeline except that, where she like comes through the room and they talk about her like in passing, and then they like hang out for a while, and they like play music and stuff, and he's just sort of there, and it's like creepy or whatever. And then Madeline dies, and he basically is like, I woke up one morning and Roderick was like, Madeline died in the night. And they put her in the crypt beneath the house because their graveyard is so far away. And also, like, he's very ill and like doesn't know like what to do at the moment. Like he probably can't handle like doing like funeral things. So she dies, and then like the next day or something like that, like very soon afterwards, she comes back and they see her like walk into the room, and they're like, holy shit, that's a dead lady right there. But it's, before I get into that, let me finish with the premise. So she comes in and she's comes back from the dead, and she walks up to Roderick, and she like collapses onto them, and they both die. They both die like at that moment. And so they're just both dead now, and the main character leaves and like thinks about how like their line has ended now. So that's it. Like that's the story. He goes, and his friends are sick, and his sister dies, and then she comes back to life, and it's spooky, and then she dies, and that's pretty much the whole thing. So then, to sort of compare that, I will go through the premise of what moves the dead quickly and then sort of compare them. So what moves the dead, very similar premise. The main character in this one is a woman who is sort of like, her gender is sort of not specified at first, and then is sort of, she's almost like a little bit ambiguous because of her like military past. There's a whole thing that the author gets into about how in this scenario, in this like alternate reality, your gender is influenced by like your military employment or engagement, whatever. There's a plane. So that's the whole thing. But it's, for this, I'm going to just say like she's a woman. So the main character, who is female, gets a letter from Roderick, who she knew from the military, but she also grew up with Roderick and Madeline as children. So she knows them from before, but like served in the military with Roderick. And she receives a letter from him basically saying that Madeline is really sick and he wants the main character to, Easton, her last name is Easton, to come and visit because he doesn't know like how long she has left and like doesn't know what to do. So Easton goes to their house, and it's very obvious like as soon as she arrives that like the land is very sickly, like there's something wrong with the lake, and the house is like moldy. But before she gets there, she runs into this woman who is a mushroom researcher. It's kind of hard to say. She's a mushroom researcher who goes out and like paints different mushrooms in the landscape. In the forest, let's just say in the forest. She's out in the forest painting mushrooms all the time, and she runs into this woman who is like writing down different characteristics of mushrooms and like painting them. And they're talking about like, oh, different types of mushrooms that grow in the area. Don't touch this one. It's like really poisonous and smells really bad, whatever. So then Easton goes to the house. He finds that it's dark and damp and everything is like has black mold growing all over it, and that both of her friends are very sick. So Madeline is super ill, very frail, can barely move on her own. And then Roderick is doing like a little bit better, but also has lost a ton of weight, is very, very, very frail and thin. And she's basically like, you guys need to get out of this house. And Roderick is like, no, we can't, because Madeline is too ill. Like if we left, she might not survive, and like we don't want to leave the house. It's like our only like connection to family, but also she would just like die if we tried to bring her to the city, so it's not worth it. So they're basically going to stay there. But there is also a doctor there who his name is Denton, who they've called in to take care of Madeline because he doesn't know what else to do. And Denton is like, I don't know what's wrong with her. I'm doing my best, but like, I have no idea. It's like not anything that I've seen before. I don't really understand what's going on. So he's doing his best, but is basically unhelpful. So then it goes through them for a while, like hanging out and, creepy atmosphere things. The main character, Easton, goes out and is like trying to hunt because she thinks that if Madeline gets some fresh food, that she'll do better, because currently what they're eating is like old and like I think it's described as being just like tasteless and like stale and moldy, and she's like, this can't be good. I'm gonna go out and like hunt fresh meat. And so she goes out and notices rabbits that act really weird. They don't move when you approach them. They will just stand there and like stare at you no matter how close you get to them, and they just act very weird, like unlike they should. And then ends up going to like a farm and talking to farmers there who are like, yeah, the rabbits are really, really weird. Like, I wouldn't eat them. Like, don't trust them. So at a certain point, Easton does shoot a rabbit, and it like blows off half of its head, and it doesn't die. It just goes back over to the other rabbits and stands up and stares at her. And she is like, I don't know what to do about that. That's really scary. But maybe I like saw it wrong. Maybe I didn't hit it as bad as I thought I did. Maybe, you know, sort of talked herself into believing that what she saw didn't happen. So then they go back to the house and spend some more time like hanging out with them. And Madeline's health sort of goes up and down, but then eventually also Easton finds her sleepwalking a lot, where she seems to be sleepwalking, in this weird state where she is like sort of unaware of what's going on, but she's talking like a child, very simplistically, just walking around at night. And so that's like freaking Easton out as well. And so whatever. So eventually Madeline dies, and they put her in the crypt. Easton goes, like sneaks down later alone to look at her body, because the only time she saw her dead was she was under a sheet. And she looks at her body and notices she has a broken neck. So now it becomes like a murder mystery where she's like, who in the house right now would have killed her? As it turns out, her brother killed her because he basically figured out what was going on. And he couldn't like allow it to continue. So basically what you end up discovering is that the mushrooms in the area are like becoming intelligent, and they take over the bodies of other creatures and control them. So that's what happened with Madeline, is the mushrooms like infested her body, took over her brain, and she was like sort of no longer alive. They had sort of like consumed her. And so Roderick killed her so that he could stop this terrible like infestation of her brain from happening. So he murders her, and then she comes back, and she is trying to convince Easton to accept the mushrooms into her own body and like spread them because they're intelligent. And isn't this so amazing that this is happening? And so they eventually escape from her. They like lock her in this room, and they escape the house, and Roderick is like, he knows he's infested too, and it's only like a matter of time before he gets eaten or like taken over by these mushrooms. So he is like, I'm gonna burn the house down. And he goes back in the house, and they burn it down, and they make sure that the infestation is eradicated, and that is the end. So obviously a lot more is happening in What Moves the Dead. And there were a lot of aspects that I liked about it, and some that, not that I didn't like, but like maybe didn't necessarily add to the vibe as much as I wanted to. So let's talk about that. In Fall of the House of Usher, when you're reading it, there are a couple of references to like nature being bad. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. There are like mentions of the house being like very creepy, obviously, and then like the nature being off in some way, but like not really. Like they're like, oh, the lake is very still and dark and quiet, and it's almost like the nature itself is like dangerous in some way, but it's not super explicit. It's just sort of like, if I had read it without reading What Moves the Dead and wasn't looking for that, for like the descriptions of mushrooms and things like that, there are no specific descriptions of mushrooms as far as I remember, but if I wasn't looking for that like nature vibe specifically, I don't think I would have even noticed it. I think I would have just thought like, oh, this is just his way of creating creepy atmospheres. Like, you know, the forest is dark and you know, it smells like decaying leaves, and the lake is dark and quiet and that sort of thing. But there are like references to nature, so I can sort of see where T. Kingfisher pulled that out and emphasized that into making it into mushrooms, which I really liked because I love mushrooms. I love the idea of like a mushroom consciousness. Fun fact, supposedly mushrooms have more of a consciousness than we realize, or than a lot of people realize. Studies on them show them as being able to like communicate and being very like interconnected. So definitely look that up if you're interested, because I love mushrooms. I think that's really cool. But anyway, so I love the idea that mushrooms have gained this new level of sentience where they're like, we can take over a human form and control it. So I love that aspect. The original definitely didn't do that. They did have a few places where they mention the nature being creepy. So I wrote down this quote here. This is Roderick in reference to him thinking about like sort of like being haunted, like what is going on here? Why is this like this? And it says he believed the gray stones of his house and the small plants growing on the stones and the decaying trees had a power over him that made him what he was. So there is, in a sense, like him thinking about his surroundings and like assuming that it's affecting him negatively in that way. So that atmosphere is there. And then he also says, perhaps the lake is the cause, which in What Moves the Dead, it ends up being that the mushrooms, there's like a fungus in the lake that is the cause of this fungi infection that Madeline gets. So I can see where T. Kingfisher like pulled that out, and I liked what she did with that a lot. That being said, there are parts of it that there's almost too much explanation going on, where we know too fully that this is exactly what's happening. I think if there had been like a suggestion that it was a fungal infection causing this, but we don't know for sure, I would have liked that better, because then you still get that the psychological question where it's like, is this actually a fungal infection, or is there something going on like with her mind? And it's very obvious that that's not what's happening. It's just like, it was mushrooms did it. So even though I liked that aspect, you know, the mushrooms being at fault, there's a huge squirrel over there. I think I would have preferred a little less explanation, a little less analytical sense, so that at the end of the book, I could sort of think about it and question what was actually going on here. I prefer that. I think that would have made the book stick with me a little bit more if I could like think about it and analyze it on my own and be like, what do I suppose actually happened? I don't necessarily like when books like this, especially being so short and in ways like metaphorical or psychological. Like, I don't like when it's just spelled out for you, this is what happened. You're like, okay, sure. Like, yes, I liked the book and it was a good premise, but I think having some mystery in there would have elevated it a bit. I do like that What Moves the Dead is longer, obviously, than Fall of the House of Usher. So it has a lot more time to build tension. And I think that works really well. T. Kingfisher slowly over time adds these little like things, like the rabbits being really weird. And talking to the mushroom researcher, like seeing her out there, you sort of get the sense that like something is going on. Like there are a lot of different kinds of mushrooms, and like some of them are dangerous. And then just like the little things with Roderick and Madeline's illness. So you do get like a nice building of tension that you don't get from Fall of the House of Usher, because it's so short. It's just sort of like, here's what's going on, and then, oh my god, she came back from the dead, and it's just like, okay, well, that's creepy, but you know, I've read much creepier. I liked the building of tension much more. Also, I did enjoy, even though it doesn't necessarily turn into a murder mystery, I did like the added aspect of Madeline being murdered. I don't know why I did air quotes like that. She did kind of get murdered, but she gets murdered, and then for like a little bit, the main character has to wonder who did it, and it adds a whole new element of tension and suspense, which I think it does need at the end, because just having her come back to life only to die again sort of fell flat for me in Fall of the House of Usher. And so she comes back from the dead in What Moves the Dead, and she is really intense about trying to get them to accept the mushrooms and like let them continue on. And she gets to a point where she's like pounding through the door because they've locked her inside, and she's like trying to attack them, and that adds a really nice like aspect to it that makes it much creepier. She doesn't just come back and die immediately. She comes back and is like intense and upset, and her brother has murdered her, which, you know, makes her angry as well, and is also very upsetting for him. It makes it, for his character, like very intense. So I think that's built very well. I did, in What Moves the Dead, I did have the same sort of question of like, why is the main character there? Is it literally just to like watch them die? Like, the main character's not helping really in any way. Like, they asked the main character to come there, but Easton is sort of like talks about it at a certain point about like, I don't know how long I should stay. They obviously don't have that much food. Like, I feel bad eating their food, but then stays for a while. I want to say it's at least a week, if not more. And I just sort of wonder like what their plan was. I think because Fall of the House of Usher is so short, that aspect doesn't really matter, because you're not really thinking about that. It's just sort of about like the premise. But with this book, because it is longer and more built up, you do wonder like, what are they doing there? Why are they there? Like, when it becomes obvious that they won't accept help and that you can't help them, like, are you literally just there to watch them die? And I mean, I guess if I had a friend who lived in a remote area who was like, I'm going to die, come visit me, like, it would feel weird to leave before they die. I guess if their death was imminent, I don't know, it just seems strange. Like, I just wonder, I just wish there was like a time limit almost, which I think could have added to the suspense as well, where it's like, I can come and visit you for this amount of time, but then I have to leave. I think that would have made more sense. Just like, give me an explanation of like how long you're planning on being there, like whatever. Because like, just showing up at somebody's house with no time limit, it just seems strange to me. So that character sort of aspect, or almost like plot aspect, distracted me a little bit. I think, that being said, so character development wise, I thought all of the characters in What Moves the Dead were very like uniquely themselves. So they each had like a personality, and you could tell like the differences between them, which is very nice, especially because Fall of the House of Usher is so short that you don't really get any character anything. So I don't know anything about the main character. I don't really know anything about Roderick. Certainly don't know anything about Madeline. She's like barely even featured. So, I mean, obviously it's very short. So like, I don't blame it for leaning on the premise, but it is just premise. Like, it's just, here's the plot. And I think that's fine for something so short. But it obviously wasn't nearly as engaging, especially for me. I've told you many times that I care very much about character building. So I did enjoy that there was a lot of character building. I did actually really like that there was a lot of history between them, and that we get that history, and that I think it could have done without the explanation, the alternate history sort of explanations of this is how our military works, and like the gender system is completely different, and this is like a liquor that only exists in this fake country, and like this is how it was made. There are a lot of like details about things that we could have gone without in a book so short, but I do think that it benefits from having them in this case. I don't think all stories as short as this one can pull it off, but it does sort of like weave into the story in a way that works and does make sense. So I did enjoy that. I will say one thing that stood out to me was Denton, the doctor, is American, and the rest of them are sort of either English or like vaguely European. So I don't think they're explicit. I forget where they live, but it's like European, and they're from like a fictional country in Europe. But Denton is American, very specifically American, and they hate that about him, which, like, I get it. Like, you know, when they first meet him, they're like, oh God, he's American. And like, I totally get that. And like, I'm not offended by that. Like, I don't mind that at all. Whatever. But they sort of harp on it where it's like, oh my God, stupid Americans. And I thought it was like a character building thing, because Denton is the doctor. He's there to help Madeline. He's very nice. And he doesn't really do anything specific except like ask questions. So okay, so they keep harping on the fact that he's like a stupid American for like not understanding like the things that they do, which I at first I was like, okay, so like this is probably like building to something. And the main character has like this bonding moment with Denton, and I was like, they like start to like be like, okay, like he's great, like I like him, he's a good guy. And so I was like, okay, so the character arc is that like their first impression is that they hate Americans, but then like she like, oh, he's actually really good, he's here to help my friend, like whatever. But then after that scene, I'm pretty sure it's when they're talking about the difference between a rabbit and a hare, and Denton is like, oh, is there a difference? And the main character is like thinking to themselves, oh my God, like stupid Americans, God save me from Americans or whatever. And I was sort of annoyed by this because I thought it was like character arc. Like I said, like, oh, like you hated him at first, but now you realize like he's cool or whatever. And then he asks like a simple question, and the main character like reverts immediately back to like, oh, you stupid American. And I was just like, this is a guy who has been nothing but nice to you, who is there to help your friend. And so I just didn't like that. Like I could understand it at first, but like I think if it were me, I would cut out that part and just have it be like we're friends now, and I'm not going to jump straight to like calling you stupid because you had a question. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't a huge deal. It just like stood out to me as being like sort of annoying because I really liked the main character and sort of understood their mindset and their view of like this whole scenario, except for that one thing. Because like, if my friend was dying and this guy who is a doctor who doesn't know what's going on with her is there to help and like do the best that he can, I feel like ridiculing him for like where he's from is just like not what I would be doing. Or like, it's just like not cool. I don't know. And that can be said for like, I know it's like very like easy and it's very easy to like criticize like America. And I'm not like blaming anyone for doing that in any way. I just think like, take the America aspect out of it. No matter where they're from, if they're there to help my friend, I couldn't picture just being like, oh, you stupid asshole. Like, you don't know what a rabbit is versus what a hare is, especially after having like that bonding moment with them. So that just sort of stuck out to me. I don't know. It's not that big of a deal, but I wanted to mention it because like that was like, honestly, like maybe one of the only points where the writing sort of didn't work for me, because most of it is very, very good and I really enjoyed it, and nothing really like tripped me up or pulled me out of it until that like one moment, because I was like, oh, they're friends now, and then she immediately was like, oh, you stupid asshole. So I did want to mention it because like I do really like it and I think it's really good, and I just think if that one thing was pulled out of it, like edited out, where it was like, you know, still, if he like doesn't know the difference between rabbits and hares, like roll your eyes, but don't make it a thing, like a big thing. Like, he's doing his best, he wants to help you, you know. So I don't know, whatever. So the only other thing that like stood out to me about the differences in What Moves the Dead versus Fall of the House of Usher is that in Fall of the House of Usher, it is very secluded and they're very much like alone in this area, in this dark, dingy part of the forest. And I think that does a really good job of like creating that secluded, creepy atmosphere. In What Moves the Dead, there are several other people like walking around. Like they go to a farm nearby, so like there's a farmer and his kids, and then there's the mushroom researcher woman who is just like always out and about. Every time they go outside, as soon as they go into the forest, they're like, oh, there's that lady. So in that aspect, it was not as like secluded and creepy. It gives you the sense like, oh, there's other people walking around. And like, if there's other people walking around and like so nearby, why don't they have this mushroom disease? Is it just this one very specific strain that's like near the Usher house and that's why? But like, it almost feels like there should be more disease, more things going on other than just the rabbits. It's sort of hard to believe that if this fungus is really intelligent and like changing and multiplying, that it would jump from being in a lake to being in rabbits and then straight to a human. It seems like there would be more noticeable like things going on, and then also like if there are other people so nearby that they would be affected in some way as well, but it seems like they're not. So I don't think it's a bad thing to have those people there, because like it's not a lot of people, it's just a couple other characters, but it does sort of stand out as being like, well, you know, why aren't they sick? What's their deal? How did this fungus like evolve? So I feel like there could have been a little bit more there. And then also the mushroom researcher lady says that she's related to Beatrix Potter, just sort of randomly, which I think is unnecessary and did sort of pull me out of it as well, where I sort of like rolled my eyes when I read that, and I was like, it feels like she's trying to create like a cinematic universe for this book where it's like Beatrix Potter is related. Like, I don't know, it just seemed like unnecessary and like a little bit goofy. to have that like be a thing. And it was like at the very end. So they meet this mushroom lady, and she's a great artist, and she's painting these mushrooms and stuff. And then sort of right at the end, they're like complimenting her mushroom artwork, and she's like, "You think this is good? You should see what my niece Beatrix can do," or whatever. And I was just like, okay, like, I don't know. It doesn't matter. It just seemed like cheesy. And the rest of the book is so not that way that I don't know. It made me feel like I mean, like, it's supposed to be real life, but, or like based in reality, obviously, and like an alternate timeline. So I could see it. Like, it's not that it's not realistic. I don't know. It just stuck out to me as like being kind of lame. And that could just be me. I don't know. It doesn't matter really. It doesn't affect the writing at all. But I was talking about things that pulled me out of it. And there really weren't many. Overall, it was very, very good, very smooth reading, but like that was just one of them. So then obviously the very end, I think What Moves the Dead does a much better ending of having this intense moment between Madeline and her brother and Easton, and her being very aggressive and obviously like possessed, and then burning down the house, her own brother like burning down the house with both of them inside to rid the world of this infection. And that ending, you know, much more intense versus Fall of the House of Usher, where Madeline comes back and they're like, oh my god, she's alive, and then she collapses onto Roderick and they both just like die. I guess he's so frail at that point that he just dies from, I don't know, pressure being applied to him, or maybe like fright. He just dies of fright. But I definitely enjoyed the What Moves the Dead ending much more. And like I said, it's very not psychological or like metaphorical in any way. It's just sort of like a story about this intense mushroom infection that does weird things. And I did really enjoy it, and I do recommend it. But like I said, it's probably a 3.5 out of 5. There were like a couple aspects that I didn't completely love about it. But for the most part, I thought it was really good, entertaining, quick read. And it was very fun to be able to go in and analyze it against Edgar Allan Poe. You know, his obviously doesn't have as much time to expand on these ideas, but there were aspects of it that I liked better, and aspects of What Moves the Dead that I thought were better. So I think if you like this premise, you'll like both of them. But yeah, that was fun to go into and like talk about. And I'm almost done with currently We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. It's really good. I think that Shirley Jackson is like one of my new favorite writers. I read Haunting of Hill House last year, and you know, this fall I'm reading We Have Always Lived in the Castle, and I'm not even done with it yet. I'm close. But I've already started looking at more Shirley Jackson books to buy, because I think her writing is really, really good. I really enjoy it. I have had to slow down my reading a little bit. Work has had an uptick in busyness, so I've been really busy with that. Not reading as much as I should, but slowly I am. And so I'm almost done with what We Have Always Lived in the Castle. And then there is one of my TBRs that I bounced off of that I probably won't be reading. But then I will be moving on, I think probably to Carmilla. And then, but yeah, I will talk to you again soon about We've Always Lived in the Castle. I think that one deserves a really good, like, classic college style, like, analysis. So if you haven't read it, definitely read it, because I want to do that video as well. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this. It was fun to be outside in the leaves, and you know, beautiful fall day. I got to go to the state fair yesterday, and so that was super fun. It's I'm totally all in fall now, so I'm very excited. And yeah, tell me what you thought of What Moves the Dead. Tell me if you've read Fall of the House of Usher, what you think. Obviously Edgar Allan Poe, classic, but do you think that he can be topped? I think he did. I think he got topped by What Moves the Dead, honestly. There's just so much more to it. But yeah, keep me updated on what you think. And once again, if you have ideas for me, things you want me to talk about, things you want me to read, let me know, and I will definitely check it out. And I look forward to talking to you again soon, and hopefully chatting with you about some books in the comments. And yeah, thanks for coming back and joining me again. I hope you continue to do so. It's been great.